Welcome to episode 136 of Convos on the Pedicab. I'm here with Craig Nazor. Craig, you are, just one more time for the camera.
The conservation chair of the Lonestar chapter of the Sierra Club, which is the state chapter.
Excellent. And we're here. We're going to talk about the environment, and we're going to talk about climate change.
Yeah.
Very excited. Before we get started, we got to give a shout out to our sponsor. Have you been leaving your house outside again? Texas weather can wreak havoc on your home, especially your roof. And if you haven't had it inspected lately, chances are that outside elements could be making their way inside your home. So trust Balcones Roofing and Remodeling to perform a thorough roof inspection and offer long-lasting solutions. They are the only 5-star rated roofer in Austin who specialize in installing the impact-resistant F-Wave Revia and back all roof replacements with a $20,000 guarantee. To schedule a roof inspection, call 512-937-8805 or visit balconesroofsaustin.com. All right, Craig, so happy to have you on.
Yes. Well, it's very interesting. You talk about roofs.
How so?
I have a metal roof.
Oh, how does that...
A metal roof keeps your house a lot cooler. And I got it way back during the Obama stimulus where I got over $3,000 back on my income tax for putting on a metal roof. Just, I had to pay $3,000 less income tax.
Wow, look at that.
I know. It was like, why didn't everybody do it? And you know what? I've never had to. And then... So when I got my solar cells, when you put them up on a shingle roof, they got to drill holes and, blah, 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 blah. If you put a standing seam metal roof, you just clip them on. It took them 2 hours.
That's some fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Craig, let's cut to the chase. How do you think the city is doing? What grade would you give the city in terms of fighting climate change and protecting the environment?
They're trying. So I wouldn't give them a failing grade. But they have some real daunting challenges, which keeps them from doing better than they could. So I would maybe be between a C and a B.
I'd say a C minus.
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhere in there. It's really hard to say because we know what their policies are and we know what they say they're going to do and what they want to do, but then the proof is in the pudding, and you always have to wait and see if the program's going to work or not. You know what I mean? It's like...
Here's my take, right? And it's that I feel like what the city does is they repeat a lot of the Davos Class talking points.
Yeah, there is. In the political world, there are talking points, and they want everybody to get on the same page because you got to be on my side or you're on the other side. And so we're going to say this. Well, we can't say this, but we say this. We say, but your side. But every once in a while, someone comes up who's a disruptor, who says the things, and sometimes he'll like Bernie Sanders is an example of that. He was a bit of a disruptor.
He was a bit of a disruptor.
Yeah.
And he was.
Yeah.
Was. Keyword was.
Well, but see, then you get someone like Donald Trump and you say, my God, we all got to be against this guy. And then it's cause for everybody to pull back into their little shell again. You know what I mean? So
Trump aside, the city likes to use Donald Trump as a way to kind of jam their policies down people's throat. Like in 2018 when they tried to fight against Code Next, or when they tried to continue to manifest Code Next, and they tried to fight against Prop B, which was the item to let people, like neighborhoods, decide their land code. Or let people vote in their land code. They called They said don't Trump Austin in order to get people to vote against Prop B. Yeah,
some people said that.
Well, the city of Austin said that. Like a whole bunch of these new urbanists that were like openly with Adler's campaign were saying this very clearly.
And this is what happens. This happens with environmentalists. You get these cliques of people who ally together because they're trying to get something done, and they agree on what everybody's going to say, and it's for a good cause. I mean, they're trying to do it for a good cause. But it can look to people standing a little bit far away, it can look a little bit, do you really believe that? You might know the person who's up there and you've talked to them before and they didn't really say that before. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the head of the NAACP was against Prop B. Nelson Linder was actively supporting Prop B.
Well, now, what was Prop B again exactly?
It allowed people to vote on what their land code was going to be.
Right. Well, but there was a law. There was a challenge in court, and the court decided that they couldn't.
No, the thing was about Code Next. It was just about the city being able to just openly densify everything at will. Basically, I think was what it was.
Yeah, that's that is a very controversial issue among the environmental because we do have new urbanists, and we do have maybe what you might call the more classical environmentalists, and I kind of see pluses minuses on both. But one of my things is I believe impervious cover is really, really important, and I don't think you can run over impervious cover for density.
What is impervious cover for those of us who don't know?
Okay, that's a very good point. Impervious cover is when development puts something on the surface of the soil or the land that prevents rainwater from soaking down through the soil and into the aquifer the way land has always worked before humans got here.
Okay.
So that's it. And the more impervious cover you put on, instead of soaking down into the soil, going into the aquifer, that's a very slow process, and it cleans the water because it has to soak through soil.
Yeah.
Okay. So what if you have too much impervious cover, you get worse water quality and worse flooding. Both things happen because it's not percolating through the soil, and it all runs off all at once instead of taking days, weeks to go down underground and through the...
Yeah, and you're getting water that's getting absorbed on concrete and pavement, which people walk on and dog shit on and all this other stuff. And now that's going in your water, and now the water's less clean to drink, and now if you want to go fishing, it's harder to eat the fish in the water, and it creates a slew of problems. And a lot of the people in the climate change crowd don't want to talk about that, but they, at the same time, they tell you not to drive your car. Well, and I think it creates a lot of division and polarization with how this is all being communicated.
I don't know if it's a lot of people, but what it comes down to basically, it's complicated. I mean, because it's a natural world. The natural world, look around us. Look, we're in a place in Austin, and look at the flowers blooming. Look at the things, you have trumpavine over there. You have seeds to lantana over there. That's a lantana. It probably bloomed earlier. We have, it's complicated, and people want a quick fix. They're worried. They're scared. They want, they're scared. You should play that tape earlier.
Oh, yeah.
They want a quick fix, and we got to do this. We got to do that. And that's not, that might not help. You know what I mean? In fact, that might make problems worse.
It will make problems worse. I mean, you have the Biden administration is thinking about conducting studies to block out the sun from going into the atmosphere. I'm not kidding. It was in Politico. Well, it was in Politico. There was an actual article about this.
I will look that up. That is kind of interesting.
It says, hold on. It says, I want to show it to you. White House cautiously opens the door to study blocking sun's rays to slow global warming. This is the title of the Politico article.
How do they plan on blocking the sun's rays?
The White House offered measured support for the idea of studying how to block sunlight from hitting Earth's surface as a way to limit global warming in a congressionally mandated report that could bring efforts once confined. Known as solar radiation modification is a potentially effective response to fighting climate change, but one that could have unknown side effects stemming from altering the chemical makeup of the atmosphere.
Okay, that's it. So this is what you call geoengineering.
Okay.
There's a whole... the people who are afraid that we won't get anything done and it's gonna damage the world... There's a couple of these. One thing is to seed the ocean with iron, which causes the ocean to absorb more CO2 more quickly. Another one is to put, we already done it with sulfur dioxide way back, in our bad pollution days. That cools the planet too. There are things that but the thing is, I was just talking about this. You cannot experiment on the climate. And because we just have one climate, it's worldwide, and if you put it up there, you're stuck with it. There's no little Earth inside a test tube that we can, try this. So, there's people who say we got to study geoengineering. I'm one of the people who doesn't mind if we spend a little bit of money studying it, but I'm certainly not going to sign up for any kind of geoengineering until I know a lot more about it.
Geoengineering sounds very dangerous.
Yeah, it's very risky. I think the risk level on geoengineering is quite high.
I mean, you ever look at the sky and just look at all the trails and stuff?
The jet contrails. Oh God, that was another. Oh my God. Oh, talk about a rat hole of God knows what. But the contrails really, as far as anyone I've ever seen real science, not doing much, except, those jets are spewing CO2 up there.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that's not good, but we can't see the CO2.
Did you ever see that movie? It was a long time ago. What in the world are they spraying?
I heard about it. I didn't see it.
I saw it a few years ago, and it just reminded me about this. But like basically, like they documented farmers in like Northern California and like just rural parts of America that had people who had like large farms, and they talked about how like all of the geoengineering, the CO2, the aluminum, the barium, and strontium coming out of the jet planes was like having a noticeable effect on the soil and the crops that were being grown amongst these farmers.
I have seen no credible science that is true, but at the same time, I'm glad there's someone out there looking.
It's a good thing to look at, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why looking at geoengineering, as long as you don't spend a whole lot of money and as long as you don't start spraying stuff up there, I don't mind them doing research on that. Because you know what? The other thing about research is people research one thing and they'll discover something completely different, you know? And an example of this is, they called it a beggar's lice, that little seed that sticks on your pants and you walk through and you get a million of them on you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a non-native species, actually. Well, someone actually studied that, and you know what came out of that?
What happened?
Velcro.
Oh, that's interesting.
And for the Army, because they needed something that would hold and would quick to, and wouldn't get tangled or tied up. And Velcro came out of that. And that was, the person studying the beggar's lice wasn't looking for Velcro. You know what I mean?
What were they looking for?
They were wondering how it works. How the hell does that stuff stick on there? It like really sticks. What's going on?
Yeah.
And they look at it and then bang. So see, and that's where research, a lot of people will get upset about people doing this kind of research or that kind of research or whatever. I don't like to see them throwing like billions of dollars into something that I'm suspicious of.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like,
well, how much money are they throwing into that? I'm not sure. How much is our budget?
Well, Well, look, I mean, who conducts a lot of these studies? And a lot of these studies, they are conducted. I mean, I could be wrong, but a lot of these studies are conducted through NASA. And if you look at like NASA's budget, like their budget is astronomical.
Well, but I'll tell you how NASA does some of them, but how a lot of scientific studies done is they're done in our university system in America. And the way this works, and people don't understand that, they talk about peer review and publish, and people are saying, well, they're paying off the scientists to come up with that result.
I kind of think that a lot of that stuff is true, though. A lot of scientists
Well,
scientists got paid off to say that, like, you should eat like sugar and like, complex carbohydrates that are better for you than meat. And they did that in the 1950s and 60s.
Well,
and that wound up just being totally false in terms of the nutrition.
But they might have. I see. It's an individual case by case thing. I don't know a lot about that, but my mother was a scientist.
Okay.
And she did research at university hospitals in Cleveland, and the way it works is the university pays you for a position, and you do a certain amount of teaching, and then what you do is you write grants, and you get a grant to do a certain amount of research. The grant you get for the research does not go to you. You don't get any of that money. That's why it's so important that these really good scientists want to work at university. It goes to the university. And the university might use that to pay for assistants in your lab. It might pay for a graduate assistant so you don't have to teach this class so much. But what the professor, what the scientist gets is he writes up the research in a scholarly article, and it goes to peer review. And so there's a couple major journals, and you go in there and you have all these scientists that look at that, and they're the first stuff. They say, oh, that's good, or no, that's bullshit, or look, this is wrong. And they might ask him to rewrite it. They might ask him to go back and redo this because I don't believe this stuff. But if they accept it, they say, we'll publish it. That's all they do is publish it.
Right, but if you're putting results forward that like the funders who give the big grants to the universities, if it's not aligned with their priorities, wouldn't you be more likely to be told to redo the study and come up with better results?
No, because there's no system for rewarding the scientists for that. Here's how the scientist gets rewarded. Your thing is published. Once it's published, scientists all over the world look at it and try and tear it apart. Because if there's a big article gets published in a scientific journal and they can tear it apart, they get a lot of publicity for that. They can say that when it comes to when they're applying for tenure, everything. They say, well, look, I found this mistake in this science. They say, wow, he's a good scientist. And then if you do a study that totally debunks another study, which is very rare, but it does happen, then you get even more kudos. And what happens is you get to keep your job at this competitive, high-flying university. Now,
Yes.
but the thing is, you don't get paid for results. People think you do. And in some cases, that happens. When you have an applied organization, and there's some around here, and I've seen them, where they're taking money and people say, I want this result. Say that does happen, but those will not be peer reviewed, and they could never get through peer review. That's just doing
But then
it.
what about those studies financed by the sugar industry in the 1950s and 60s?
I would
that were done by like Harvard and MIT scientists that wound up being proven to be conclusively wrong. Like what about those studies?
Oh,
Like,
I would have to look at those. You'd have to see who does the studies. You have to see who did the funding. You have to see who they worked for before I could tell you on that. But it might be something different than that. Sometimes you get some results, but then a scientist said, well, you got that results because of this, and actually over this is what's happening. And that has happened with cholesterol. I know about cholesterol because I happen to have a high cholesterol.
Okay.
All right. And it changes over time because someone finds one thing and finds another thing, and what it is, it's usually never debunked totally, but what they say is, yeah, that's really an incomplete story. We need to look at this and this and this. And they look at it and they come out with a better explanation and something they used to tell you to. They say, don't do that anymore. That's not, and that's really, if you're into science and you look at it, you read it a lot, if our science wasn't any good, planes wouldn't fly. This microphone wouldn't work. This video camera wouldn't work. Your cell phone wouldn't work. I mean, because all this stuff, a lot of it is Velcro wouldn't stick. All this stuff is based on basic research that people do. And sometimes they get things wrong at the corner. But one thing that's really important is there is no major scientific consensus in the past 100 years that, and I mean a major one, something on the level of climate change or the way an atom bomb works, or, these that has been found to be completely wrong. They correct it. That part of it was a little not quite right. And they correct it. And that now 100, 500 years ago, that used to happen. But our science establishment, it's international and it's very well established. And I think we can have more faith in our scientific establishment than most people do. It doesn't mean it's 100%.
I mean, I would like to think that. Mm-hmm. I think that these past 3 years have sowed a lot of distrust in the scientific establishment, especially with how they went about COVID.
Well,
went about a lot of stuff regarding that.
Now, medical science is a little different than the kind of science I'm talking about, climate change. And each thing is different. Climate change is different because we can't test anywhere. Well, but COVID and stuff like that is also sort of the same, because the doctor says do no harm. So when you have, and people have actually done this and gotten in big trouble for it.
Okay.
So you say, okay, these people are sick and these people are sick. We're going to give them the drug and they're going to give them the placebo. And these people start getting well and these people get sicker.
Yeah.
That's unethical. If you know these people are getting well and these people are getting sicker, you can't withhold the drug from them. And so that.
But you also, but giving the placebo, you might just not know. So that could be like one of the things you do initially.
Well, that's the thing. You got to, and this is why, and usually in a lot of tests, they have double-blind tests where the doctors themselves don't even know who's getting the placebo and who isn't, because maybe the doctor could slant his observations, right? I mean, they're so careful. But in the medical science, if someone's really sick and you're the doctor and there's an experimental drug and they say, this guy's going to die if we don't try something. And he says, try the experimental drug. If it kills me, I'm going to die anyway. Well, you can't experiment with that. You mean that's a one-shot deal, and it may work or it may not. And you just have one set of evidence, and scientifically that's not very worthwhile. So medicine moves differently than some of the other science because you have human lives in the balance. So for instance, if you're doing research on some kind of little critter, a little microscopic critter, you can kill a bunch of them, you can breed them in a lab, you can dump this on them, you can dump that on them. Oh, look, they all die. There's no blowback from that. You can't do that. So the medicals, and a lot of the sciences have their own little quirks. Like I said, climate change. It's hard to experiment.
Well, yeah, but I think that like a lot of the same people that are pushing the climate change, and we're speaking in generalizations, but a lot of the same people that were pushing the climate change narrative were the same people that were shaming you into not wanting to get a COVID shot, even though they did very flawed studies in terms of the effectiveness of that COVID shot.
Well, science is not the person. The science is the information. So what I would say is look at the information. So, for instance, I was looking at the information, and I actually have a friend who was one of the co-founders of Genentech.
What's that?
That's this big, huge gene editing company in San Francisco. And he left that company, and he's a multimillionaire. He's a wonderful guy, but he really knows gene research, gene splicing, all that stuff. And now he's doing a lot of this research. He's researching an endangered group of plants that he's really interested in, which Okay, well, but I called him about when they came out with mRNA vaccines, because I didn't know what that was or what that does.
Well, it just feels like it alters your genetic code, and it just seems a little bit.
No, it doesn't alter your genetic code.
It has a potential to.
Yeah, but it doesn't. But here's what it does. I'll tell you what it does, because
Okay.
it's really interesting what it does. So mRNA, messenger RNA, that's when your DNA unravels in a cell, and it says, okay, we need this little protein right now to attack the virus.
Yeah.
And so exposes it, and the mRNA copies that section, and the mRNA goes off to the place that's going to make that protein.
Okay.
Well, the mRNA they did this in a computer in 3 days. The mRNA is coded for the spikes on the coronavirus. Okay, the spikes. Okay, and what they did is they just put that code, that's all the mRNA was coded for spikes. So what happens is it goes in your body, and the cells that make shit are saying, okay, is there any mRNA telling me to make something? And all of a sudden the mRNA says, yeah, make this. And so what your body does is makes thousands of spikes.
That's not good.
No, spikes can't hurt you. The spike is the thing that's on the surface of the virus that hooks into your cell and tells your cell to open up so the rest of the stuff can infect you. So the stuff that infects you and makes you sick is not in the spike. The spike is just like the little key that unlocks the cell. So what that does is the body makes 1 million anti-spike, it's flooded with spikes.
Okay.
So the body makes all these anti-spike proteins, and they're just going all over looking for spikes. So the minute you get one little coronavirus into your body, look at it, get it, and it kills it instantly. And that's how it gets immunity. That's immunity. Now,
but hold on.
Yeah, okay.
But then, why did so many people who got this vaccine wind up getting COVID anyway? And also, how come so many people? And I know this from just personal experience. Like a lot of people I know who got that shot. Like I didn't get it, right? But like a lot of people who got these shots, they wound up getting like myocarditis. They wound up having heart problems. They wound up getting really sick from it. Like they wound up having weaker immune systems. They wound up getting COVID more often, and their COVID cases wound up being worse later on in the future. Like,
okay, well, you don't know, because that wasn't part of a scientific test. Just because something happens doesn't mean something else that happened around the same time caused that. Now, what they have done research on all the millions upon millions of people who've gotten the COVID shot, and they've done really good research. And what they found out is myocarditis is very, very rare, and it happens within the first couple weeks. And it usually heals itself. Now that's what they found. So you put that against the risk of all these people getting COVID and dying and filling hospitals and all that. And so the government makes a risk assessment based on that. Once I found out what the shot, why people got COVID anyway once they got the shot, is because coronaviruses are known for mutating very rapidly. And that spike is changing all the time.
Yeah, so it makes it seem that the vaccine may not have been that effective.
Less effective. But they came out with a new vaccine because now they know how to do it. They take the new coronavirus, and the new vaccines that came out, each time they came out, they were tempered a little bit with new spike proteins. And so, I mean, I got vaccinated 3 times.
Right.
I had absolutely no ill effects. And I was going to political things, and I didn't want to stay at home because it really matters if you show up. You know.
Well, you have to show up in person and stuff.
Yeah, it's important. So I said, I'm old, and I also did a few other things that science told you. They found that people who have higher vitamin D3 levels in their body, are more resistant to it. So I started taking D3 immediately.
Well, I was just walking outside. I just felt like when this virus started, they were just telling people to just stay at home and wear masks constantly everywhere they went. And it just seemed like the public health advice they were giving you was just not very conducive to public health.
That was the best advice they had at the time.
I don't believe that.
Okay.
I feel like, because just the reason I don't believe that is because it was during an election year. You had a president that was very polarizing. And we don't need to talk about him too much, but you had a very polarizing president.
Did you take Clorox in?
I didn't need to take any of that stuff.
Well, that's what Trump tells you to do.
I think a lot of stuff though that people say gets misconstrued, and you get little segments for clicks and for engagement on social media. I don't know. I'm not a big Trump fan, but I just feel as though a lot of the response to this virus was just very politicized because it just happened to be during an election year.
Well, of course, everything gets politicized, and I agree totally. But I think throughout, and nothing's perfect, and the federal government is far from perfect. We all know that.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think what happened is we tried really hard, and I think that the vaccine saved millions of people across the planet. I think it was, we got a little bit ripped off about how we paid for it. I think, I don't think it was equitable the way it was distributed, really. There's a bunch of things I could argue about.
Well, I also think that the idea of them trying to do vaccine passports, you got to show your QR code with your health status to go into a restaurant, has some very lasting, it turns out, it creates a Chinese social credit system almost when you're walking from place to place. And I think that created a lot of distrust amongst mainstream scientists. It created a lot of distrust amongst the media. It created a lot of government distrust. And it feels like a lot of the same people that were pushing this are also now pushing a lot of hysteria behind climate change. Doesn't mean climate change isn't real. It doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of environmental problems, but a lot of the same people that were pushing the COVID narrative that polarized and divided a lot of people, it feels as though the same cast of characters are pushing this climate narrative, and a lot of what that climate narrative is pushing is causing that girl that I showed you to have that type of visceral reaction.
Okay, but
does that make sense?
Yes, it makes total sense. We live in a free society, and some people get scared and get nervous, and some people make money and gain power by making other people scared and nervous. You've seen that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Vote for me, or the terrorists will all come over here and make salad bowls out of your skulls, I mean, maybe, he makes me feel good, I'll vote for him.
Yeah, it's vote for me, vote for me or you're a terrorist. Oh, by the way, don't get, if you don't wear your mask, you're killing grandma. It was all it was all kind of the same.
But people will do that for their own goals. But in this society, it's very complicated. We produced a lot of stuff, a lot of chemicals, we've changed the atmosphere, we've changed the very ecology, and there's science behind that. And you have to know more now than you used to have to know when you ran through the forest primeval. Can I eat this or not eat it? Did it kill you? No, then you're fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, can I drink this water?
Probably just died through trial and error, and they didn't even know.
Well, you know what Native Americans said? They would watch the old people, which were the bears. And you watch a bear. If a bear was sick, what did it do? What did it eat? And then they'd try that. So it was really a lot of observation.
Well, that's why you respect your elders, because in ancient times, if you made it to old age, you did a bunch of stuff right.
Yeah, and
so that's why it ties down.
And think of this: you had no libraries.
No,
the elder was your library.
Your 75-year-old grandfather was the library.
That's
told
exactly
you what's
right.
Going on. Yeah,
exactly right. And see, so that, but now we have to adapt to a whole different thing, and it's hard for people. Things are moving rapidly further and further away from our primal existence on a pristine world. And so we have to be smarter. We have to listen. We have to figure things out. But really, we always had to do that. It's just that it was easier, more straightforward. And I love Native American society. I like all primal societies, and I've done a little bit of studying of that. What they would always say is you observe nature. You observe nature, and there's Chief Dan George has this incredible saying. I just typed it today. He said, we would walk in the forest and we would talk to animals, and the animals would talk to us, and we get to know them.
Yeah.
If you don't talk to them, you don't know them. If you don't know them, you begin to fear them.
This episode is brought to you by Balcones Roofing and Remodeling. Have you been leaving your house outside again? Texas weather can wreak havoc on your home, especially your roof. And if you haven't had it inspected lately, chances are that outside elements could be making their way inside. Trust Balcones Roofing and Remodeling to perform a thorough roof inspection and offer long-lasting solutions. They are the only 5-star rated roofer in Austin who specialize in installing the impact-resistant F-Wave Revia and back all roof replacements with a $20,000 guarantee. To schedule a roof inspection, call 512-937-8805 or visit balconesroofsaustin.com.
What man fears, man destroys. And isn't that exactly where we are in a way? We have our one contact now, it's not really cool like it used to be back in the day where you sat around a fire. Have you ever been in a sweat lodge?
No, I don't even know what that is.
One of the most amazing experiences that ever happened in my life. They build a teepee, and this happened way out in Bastrop, out in the middle of nowhere. And
Okay.
friends said, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And I went out there, and it was all guys, and they build this teepee, and they put all these heavy blankets on it, and it was cold out. It was like in November. And then this guy had prepared it all day. He had learned this from some Native American elders, and you heated these rocks all day in a fire. And then when we came at night, you put these rocks, they were so hot they were glowing almost. You put them in the center, and we all took off all our clothes. You get in the sweat lodge, and he starts throwing water with herbs on the rocks, and the thing fills up with smoke. And then he started playing drums, and he started chanting these incredible Native American songs of the plains type of, hi, 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 with that kind of sonorous chanting. And I just have to say, first of all, I've always had allergies. Going in that sweat lodge and breathing whatever it was they put in that are the clearest my sinus has ever been, number one.
Oh, wow.
So, and that impressed the hell out of me if you've had allergies and you know how bad that can get, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then when they throw the stuff on the stuff on the rocks, they go up in these sparks that would go up in the teepee. It looked incredible. It was like, really, God, that's really cool. And then he went around the room and everybody got to say their own personal prayer to whomever they wanted to say about whatever they wanted. What's bothering you and everything. And I was just unbelievably, incredibly impressed. So then I go study that. Well, I think one of the spices was actually ash juniper, which you dry, this juniper that's all around, you burn it. And another one was horse herb, which is that purple flower,
Okay. Yeah.
But there was other stuff in there. And I started, and then I do my study and work. But I did that because I had just one hell of a credible experience. I didn't do that because, I went into some classroom and someone told me you'll do this tomorrow. And you know what I mean?
No, you want an experience for yourself, and then you got a visual experience where it helped see expand your mind and your horizon and things. Yeah.
We're not going to get some of this information in either way unless we sit down and listen to some
I agree.
boring guy kind of read through the. Really?
I think generally speaking, the best way to acquire knowledge is to just speak to people, like the old-fashioned way is to speak to people.
I think, and that's why a great teacher is so valuable, because there are some of these old scientists that you talk to them and you say, wow, I can see what, because to teach, you tell stories.
Yeah.
You don't read research. If you really teach something, you tell stories.
The reason I even developed this curiosity and this penchant for wanting to look into things is because I had these two really great history teachers in high school. This guy named Matthew Looks and Jeff Canner, and both of them. This guy was Looks was my global studies teachers, and Canner was my American history teacher. And this was right during 9/11. I was in high school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And everyone was all big on going to Iraq, you
Right.
know, and fighting the terrorists. And he's like, yeah, that's bullshit. That is bullyism, what we're doing. There are no weapons of mass destruction. This is not going to protect us. All this is going to do is
Get George W. Bush reelected.
Yeah,
which it did.
It's going to get Bush reelected. It's going to divide. It's going to create a common enemy. It's going to cause bankers to make a ton of money. It's going to cause oil executives to make a ton of money. And it's going to cause us to further have our rights eroded and get the government to have more control over you, because now we have a threat of terrorism that we just kind of exacerbated as a result.
What was that act they passed? The Patriot Act.
The Patriot Act.
You know, when they did that, there was this online group of people who I was communicating with, and one of them had worked for Microsoft or something.
Yeah.
And they met here. I forget what the name of that group was, maybe, but they met here during South by Southwest. And when the Patriot Act came out, they had it all gamed. They had it all planned. This is going to come out. Where Obama is putting, he was running then, you know, because he had come out originally against, the FISA courts and all that stuff.
He came against, yeah.
But he came out for it when he was
in office.
Yeah,
but then when he was running, you thought he was going to free people in Guantanamo Bay and do all this stuff, and it just wound up being nonsense.
So as soon as it came out to make comment, this went out, and mine was like the third comment out of thousands of comments on the thing. If you went down in number, the third comment. And don't you know Obama read it? Now, maybe it didn't do anything, who knows what it did. But, essentially what I said is, people don't want a king. They don't want, that's not what people in America want to expect out of a leader. And this is giving too much power to the president.
Well, a lot of, yeah.
And the thing is, so we were talking about this earlier. There's a lot of crazy going on. There's a lot of people trying to scare you and misconstruing
scared
stuff.
People to lock down and stay home and do all this stuff during COVID, and then we had the greatest transfer from the middle class to like billionaires in history. We printed 80% of our money supply as a result of people being scared as a result, from COVID. They almost created a digital ID vaccine passport system where you had to show a QR code just to go in to a department store. And then now when it comes to like some of the climate change stuff, they're like using the threat of climate change to get people to like not want to reproduce. They're telling people that they're trying to put people into 15-minute cities. They're trying to create central bank digital currencies. There's a lot of this other stuff that's happening as a result of like
people are saying
the hysteria behind it.
Right, I know, but it depends on what stream of information you listen to. The real environmentalists know that cryptocurrency is a huge, enormous suck of energy.
Okay.
It's enormous. It takes, because the way you keep cryptocurrency safe is you do a lot of calculations all the time.
Well, yeah.
I know. And what these crypto mining.
Well, Bitcoin mining. Because a lot of these other cryptocurrencies are not even real. They're scams and they're
that's bullshit. But
they're all bullshit. So like, we're talking about Bitcoin and Bitcoin only.
Yeah. Okay. Bitcoin uses unbelievable, incredible, huge, enormous amounts of energy.
Okay. Fair.
And the thing is, so if you're worried about climate change, unless they are using all solar cells, which they're not.
But they actually have been, the transition from Bitcoin mining to renewables has actually been, like, they've actually had the highest rate of transitioning to renewable energy.
Well, of course, because they've been criticized heavily.
But they've still been doing it. And it's more efficient. Well, and also, the natural gas that a lot of natural gas that would get flared into the atmosphere is now being used to mine Bitcoin and produce better money that cannot be inflated at the whims of bureaucrats and government officials.
But gas flaring into the atmosphere, methane is a big greenhouse gas. It's more potent than CO2, but it also comes out of the atmosphere much quicker. It comes out of the atmosphere in a year or two, whereas CO2 has a half-life of 6 years. But when you burn it, you turn it into CO2 and put it up there and stays forever.
But how much energy do we waste on a fiat system that incentivizes endless wars, monocropping, and just destroying the atmosphere and putting chemicals in the water and chemicals in the food for short-term profits?
That's another question. And I would point out here, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not we do that or we do this. It's not. That's not what it is. We can move everything. Okay, an example is, I'm a retired musician, never made a lot of money. don't have a very big retirement, but I did get a bit of an inheritance, which is very
That's good. Yeah.
funny, from an oil guy who I didn't even know. He was like a second cousin. He died in West Texas. So what did I do? Well, first of all, I had managed to buy one house, the only one house I ever owned in my life. I did everything to weatherize it and make it like I got triple pane windows, not just double pane, triple pane. I had the special paint put on. I got the metal roof. I got a super efficient air conditioning system. And I did this all with rebates. So the amount of money I paid was what it would have cost normally without any rebates, for the normal kind, but I got it all souped up.
Yeah.
So then Austin Energy has a really good deal on solar. I said, come over there. They tested my house. They pulled all the information. And the solar company came back to me and they said, you know what, Craig? You have the most efficient house we have ever seen in this neighborhood. It's by far the most efficient. So I said, okay, which means I can get fewer solar cells because they'll only give rebates up to solar cells for the amount of energy you use. But so I got 10 solar cells, put it on the house. You know how much my electric bill was in June?
What was it?
$15.
Good job. Way to go.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, the point is, I did that. And what that's doing during the heat of summer, and this is why Austin Energy got pushed into doing this, during the heat of summer, when is the peak demand? That's what really
Sure. A lot of Bitcoin miners were voluntarily powering down and not mining during peak demand also because because of the way Bitcoin works here, and because of the energy consumption and because of the cost of mining, the miners were actually incentivized to power down and turn off their rigs, which is a good thing.
Okay. Well, I wasn't incentivized near that much, but what happens at the height at 5 o'clock in the day, like right now, hot as shit, that's when electricity peaks. That's when my solar cells are producing 5 times more electricity than I am using. And it's going back into the grid, keeping the grid from failing. And the city of Austin has this deal where they average the amount of electricity I produce. So I'm not producing any electricity at night, right?
Yeah.
And so they give me credit for all the extra up to my total electricity use. And if I have a couple extra solar cells on there, then what that's doing is that's just providing more energy to keep the grid from failing. Now, the next step is to get a house battery. Because you remember Winter Storm Uri? Winter Storm Uri, 2021.
Oh, well, yeah. You know what's funny? Me and my girlfriend were in Miami during that time.
Okay. I was here. No electricity for 4.5 days. The water went out after the first day. The temperature would stay below freezing for 5 days.
Yeah.
The lowest temperature was 7 degrees.
Oh, it was insane. It was bananas.
All right. Oh, I know. And so I was sitting in the dark for 4.5 days thinking, because it also, Winter Storm Uri had a climate change signature. And we can talk about that. It's pretty interesting. But what happened was, I sat there and I thought, and I said, I'm getting solar cells, and then when I can afford, I'm getting a house battery. Because it was sunny some of those days. It was just cold as hell. One of the days it was sunny. If I had a big enough size house battery, I could have left my electricity on.
That would have been pretty cool. Craig, do you own any Bitcoin?
No, and I'm not until they got a lot better with the energy use. I'm not going to invest in. You know what I've invested in? I've invested in my house, because real estate right now in Austin, investing in real estate in Austin is a really good deal.
Potentially, the Airbnb bubble has popped.
Well, but I'm not using it Airbnb. I'm investing in my house, so someday when I really need the money.
Right, but when things like Airbnb wind up, when that bubble winds up popping, it can be followed by a pop in the actual real estate value, because a lot of people are buying these homes because they see an investment future in being able to Airbnb the home out, and if they can't do it, then they're not going to pay as much for the home.
You're exactly right. There is no investment and I have some other investments, but they have no investment that isn't without risk. And I've decided up front, on top, I'm not going to invest in an asshole company. So, I'm not going to invest in Amazon. I'm not going to invest in Bitcoin.
Well, I don't think
I'm not going to invest in Elon Musk because he's a jerk.
Yeah, but what will you invest in Mark Zuckerberg?
Not really.
All right, well, I'm glad that you're on the same.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
He's a little better, but not. No. But what?
I don't think he's a little better at all.
Well,
I think
maybe not.
I think that Instagram and actually Facebook, like the largest amount of child trafficking networks occurred through communication on Instagram and Facebook.
I would invest in them, and I don't invest like in Walmart. I don't invest in companies that are using, Medicare and Medicaid and all that to pay their workers because they don't want to pay them a living wage. I'm not going to.
How do you feel about ESG?
What's ESG?
You don't know about ESG?
Well,
the environmental social governance standards that companies are starting to use to pretend to be more sustainable and care about the climate and social issues.
It sounds like it's got some greenwashing in it.
It's all greenwashing.
I know.
All of it's green.
I'm skeptical. I'm not.
It's all a bunch of bullshit. Is what it is.
There is a ton.
It's like the large companies. They get to. They have enough capital where they can afford to hire the trans person to be the marketer, and then they get a higher ESG score. And then this is just like a hyperbolic example, right?
Yeah,
and then the smaller company can't do that, and then the large company has a higher ESG score, and then they get more subsidies from the government as a result of that.
What it is, this is just companies trying to game the system to make more money, and they'll do it on anything. They will do it on literally
anything.
Craig,
do you know what a central bank digital currency is?
The central bank what?
Digital currency is.
Is that the thing that the United States is working on?
Well, it's the thing that the IMF, the United States, almost every country is trying to come up with pilot programs for.
Yeah. I've heard of it.
And this is why this is kind of the case for Bitcoin and why you should own it. Okay.
Right.
And the central bank digital currency is basically a way to totally revamp the financial system so that instead of banking with Chase or banking with a local bank, you're banking with the Treasury, and your money is just going to be paid to you digitally through like a Fed coin and whatnot. And once that happens, every transaction you make, every purchase you make, everything you buy is completely controlled and monitored. And the way it's issued, it's not going to be permissionless. It's going to be like, okay, well, here's your monthly stipend, and you can only buy these foods as a result of it. You can't buy red meat. You have to instead buy,
Wait. Now, I understand what you're saying, but I don't believe anybody is going to take it to that level.
No, but they are though. That's what I'm saying. Like
who's doing it?
I listen to World Economic Forum conferences. Like the Bank of International Settlements is writing like a whole bunch of papers about this. Like this stuff is actually happening. This isn't like some crazy Alex Jones like fringe conspiracy theorist stuff that's coming out of nowhere. Like this stuff is real. This is real stuff written by the WF, written by the Bank of International Settlements. They're doing conferences at Davos. You can watch this on YouTube, and they openly talk about CBDCs and talk about what they're going to be used for. And they can also easily implement negative interest rates, which is going to encourage rampant consumerism, which is probably going to be in the long term worse for the environment than using something like Bitcoin, which operates on a sound money system. And
Bitcoin operates on a very simple system where it is what it is, and it's totally unassociated from anything else. And theoretically, I think so far they've been pretty good about it. It operates by these parameters that everybody can see. These are the parameters.
Yeah, one block gets mined every 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it's
it's the node operators validate the transactions. Very hard to produce a transaction, very easy to validate, and it's actually very democratized because the block size being really small makes it really easy for anybody to run a node. So it becomes actually very people centered in terms of like being able to, validate the security of the network.
And I get that. But then on the other hand, it's totally completely reliant on technology. It's totally completely reliant on being charged by electricity. It's totally completely reliant on this huge bank of computers. It's one of those things that no matter how hard they try, there's always someone who's going to try to sabotage it. Like the mastermind, the Joker, or someone who's going to say, hey, man, if we want to take down the United States and the free world, oh, look at that.
What a beautiful bird.
Yeah, that's a mockingbird sitting on the camera. Yeah, it's in the shade, and the mockingbird came over to talk to us.
Then we could launch a coordinated attack on this thing. Yeah, I could see somebody doing that, but then that's why you have multi-sig security. That's why you have cold storage wallets. That's why you have cold cards. Like that's why you can air grab transactions and do all. There's a lot of like the security of being able to self-custody your Bitcoin is actually probably a lot higher than having your money in a Chase bank account.
Well, but my feeling is less is more. I think less
is more. less Bitcoin is going to be worth more money over time because it's mathematically proven to grow in value as time goes on.
It's a whole lot of technology.
Maybe, but there's also
and
a whole lot
in the end, the value of money is what society lays on it. If everybody in this world dropped dead except you, your money would be worth exactly nothing.
Well, yeah.
Right.
But that's not...
And if there were if there were 4 people left on the world and they had food and you didn't, and they didn't want to honor your Bitcoin, it's to me, that's not something I'm going to focus on. I'd rather spend my money on making my house more affordable, like, with the climate change thing. Yeah, more affordable. My price have dropped.
Well, Craig,
more valuable, and something that someday in the future, when I die, or someone could go live in it, they'll say, "Wow, this house is really cool."
But wouldn't saving with better money help make your house more affordable?
Not necessarily. Money. See, that's another thing. Money in a bank, it's a number. Oh, you want to really?
Oh, we talked about this at the Capitol at one time. Like 10%, only 10% of like actual Fed deposit, only 10% of actual Fed Fed deposits exist in actual cash.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. So what am I looking at? I'm looking at a number. I'm looking at a book. What I'm going to do? You know what I'd rather do? I'll tell you what I'd rather do.
Right.
And I've done a little bit of this. Buy a painting by some friend or somebody you know who's a really good artist.
Okay.
Stick it on your wall. Every time you walk by, you can see the beauty of that painting. You can think about your friend, the artist, and the price goes up.
Oh, there's so many ways to like avoid taxes with that stuff.
Oh, I know.
You can have your artist friend paint you a picture, right? You pay him to paint you a picture, right? The picture gets valued at a much higher price that you paint the artist, and then you donate that painting to a museum, and now you get a $4 million tax write-off.
Well, a lot of the art I have, I've been a musician and I've done a lot of work with dance and I've done a lot of work with theater people and visual artists and stuff like that. And I've traded. I got some really nice stuff. And another thing I've done, which I find a lot of fun, is you go, you go looking for, you go shopping for now my age is kicking in. Old stuff.
Yeah.
You go looking at flea markets. You go looking at stuff like that, and you look at paintings. You know what? My wife discovered this. In Thailand, they train these elephants to do paintings.
Okay.
And I would never say to buy those paintings because I don't like the way they keep their elephants or anything. But at the same time, the paintings that the elephants do are actually valuable, because they're actually done by... Well, she went into this store and there was this painting. It looked kind of weird, but I'd been into elephants. We'd talked about this. She was painting. This was a painting that was done by elephants. Now, if I had paid I could never got that painting because I'd never paid the people who were selling it or making all that money on that poor elephant.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it. But I went into the thrift store and she paid $4. $4 for this painting that's worth a lot more than $4.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, see, that's the kind of stuff that is fun to me. That's a lot more fun than looking in a bank account or going on the website, looking how your bank. And it's not that I don't have some money invested. Don't get me wrong, but that's just never going to be my passion.
Well, it's not so much a passion. It's like just a matter of protecting yourself from inflation and being able to own something that's yours and not having to rely on a central bank digital currency with a social credit score attached, which looks like what the Davos Class wants to roll down the pipe. And it seems like they're trying to find excuse after excuse to do that.
Well, yeah, and the reason they want to do this, the underlying reason is they have control over the money.
Of course.
That's why.
Yeah.
They have control over the money. And
something like Bitcoin, it gives you control over your own money and not them control over your money.
But I don't think that's going to happen because with Bitcoin has control over your money.
No, you have control over your money because you get to determine how you send your transactions and whatnot.
Unless,
and if you don't give away your seed phrase, and your device is protected, then your funds are safe.
Or if you don't forget it, or if you don't lose it.
Well, remember it. Then there's responsibility to remember your seed phrase.
The mockingbird is going to eat some lantana berries.
That is cool.
Oh yeah, I mean it's time for dinner.
Well, how do you feel about like a bunch of like small mom and pop regenerative farms being like, either eminent domain by like solar companies, which is what's happening in South Dakota, or like, getting bought out by like the Tyson's chickens and the big corporate factory farms.
Okay. Now this is a very important, and believe it or not, Sierra Club is looking at this.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of discussion because on the one hand, Sierra Club is saying we need climate change is real. We need to do something now. We all, everybody in Sierra Club, or most everybody believes that really strongly. But what if you want to put solar cells? And in fact, there's happening in North Texas in the Panhandle. There's this tall grass prairie site. They say, well, some of that site we could put solar panels on. And what do we need solar panels that bad? And what Sierra Club has decided is, no, we're not going to do that. Because there is value to that publicly owned tall grass prairie too. We got to come up with another solution. That's what I'm talking about, the zero-sum game. It's not a zero-sum game. We can do both. In fact, in the long run, we have to do both to save the earth. We have to preserve the earth, preserve ecosystems, preserve species integrity, and we have to lower our CO2 production, and we have to do it quickly. Is it that hard? Is that a big challenge? Hell yeah.
It's a huge challenge.
But I'm not willing to sit here and say it can't be done.
Well, I think that if people learn how to grow their own food, I started a garden actually.
Well, that helps. Yeah, I agree totally with that.
Yeah. I think learning how to grow your own food, try to go fishing and catch like your own fish and eat your own fish if you can.
Well, see, I don't eat any meat.
Oh, you're very okay.
Yeah, and that happened. Meat at the moment, the way we do meat with all
the pesticides and the monocropping and like the disgusting stuff. Well,
yeah, the way we do meat is bad.
Disgusting. It's not real meat. It takes the nutritional value away.
But the real reason I don't do meat is because I'm a real animal lover, and the way we do it for the most part is totally unethical.
Yes,
absolutely.
Well, so that's why I go to like my we have a farm. There's a farm like I have a house in Johnson City. And like we have a farm, there's like a guy in Llano who goes to the farmers markets, and we just buy like ground beef, and we buy stuff from this guy's farm. Like we know where we're getting.
Well, yeah, and that's a lot better quality than you get any other way. And I remember before I quit eating meat, the best ribeye steak I ever had in my life, the absolute best, unbelievable, incredibly good. It's not that I don't like meat.
Yeah, that's good.
Bison ribeye,
the best.
Oh my God! Yeah. Oh my!
There's another place called like KNC Cattle, which is like right off of Del Valley.
Yeah.
And they have a regenerative farm, and it's like through this project called the Beef Initiative. And it's all regenerative farm. Like they you know how regenerative farming works.
Yeah.
Really good for the environment. Like I can't. It's hard for me to explain it, but like it's good for the environment.
Well, they did that movie about it that was so good about those people who in California. There's a really good movie about regenerative farming. And how, what they ended up doing is, they had sheep and everything and goats, but they were also having gophers out there.
Okay.
Gophers.
But
But what they did is they found out, what are we going to do with all these gophers? We got to kill them, and then it's poison. Are we poison before we do it? No, you stop killing your coyotes, and you defend your sheep and your goats better from coyotes. Because guess who'll eat all the gophers if they're there?
The coyotes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's regenerative farming to me. That's like, and that the way they did. Oh, it's just an incredible movie. I can't remember the name of it. It was very good though.
That's interesting to look at. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. What were we talking about?
Regenerative farming.
Regenerative farming, Beef Initiative. We got to talk about the Permian Highway. Okay. Here's the thing too, right? With like a big reason why we're like skeptical. I'm skeptical of the city and their climate change stuff.
Yeah.
And it's that anytime like a real environmental threat is happening within their backyard, the city leadership is just deafeningly silent. Like in 2019, Kinder Morgan wanted to build and they succeeded. They built like a gas pipeline like through the Blanco River, and it was like through the part of it's going through the San Marcos, part of it's going through San Marcos. That's right in our backyard. People here, we go swimming, we go swimming, we drink like the water from the aquifer like comes from there, and like our environmental progressive leadership, like they barely said anything. They barely made a big stink out of it. They barely made any kind of a sound out of this, and like that could have been a standing rock potentially in 2019.
Well,
and the people in our city leadership who are extremely influential, like the Greg Casars, even Adler, they like just said nothing. It was an Obama appointed judge that Like, I think Kinder Morgan was going to have like an injunction where they had to wait until they started drilling until it got like looked at by an environmental agency or something like that, right? Or a surveyor to make sure it was safe and ethical. Like, the Obama appointed judge said, "Nah, go ahead and drill. Forget the environmental surveyor." You know.
Well, what happened there is I remember Sierra Club was against that. There were some aquifer groups out there who were against it because it was going across the Blanco River, I think. And it was, it was like, and there were a bunch of groups against that. But I don't think the city weighed in because, number one, they changed it so it didn't go through any of the watershed lands or any lands the city directly had any control over. And what you got to understand is in the city of Austin, I spent the spring at the legislative session this entire spring. I was there a couple times a week throughout the entire session because our conservation director, who's our hired lobbyist, Cyrus Reed, he was lobbying for a lot of really good things, and he needs help in testifying. It can't just be him testifying all the time. Yeah. So I would try and get people to come. I would testify, get other people to testify. And what goes on at the state legislature is the worst and heinous Austin bashing I have ever heard. The lies they tell about Austin.
Like, what are the
lies?
lies?
Stuff they, for instance, Equity Austin, and we work really hard on that about the police, about, having real citizen oversight of the police.
Yeah, but
they're
problem
sitting
is you
there.
have people like Chaz Moore and Chris Harris wind up becoming the mouthpieces, and you got a guy like Jose Garza who doesn't prosecute you for committing a violent crime.
Well, none of those people showed up at the state. Who showed up at the state were a bunch of guys from small towns who said that who wanted to pass a bill that says the city, large cities in Texas cannot have citizen oversight of the police. Pass a law that says you can't do it. It's illegal. That's what they wanted to do, and they picked on Austin about that. Well, they picked on Austin. What was the other thing? There was another thing. Oh yeah, they were talking about our park set-asides. For commercial development, like when you do a big condo or something, and you're going to move thousands more people into downtown Austin.
Yeah.
The city of Austin has a park set-aside. Said if you're not going to set aside part of your land downtown for parkland, which they're not because it's too expensive, then you have to pay us a fee in lieu. And they use that to fund parks, to make our parks better, to buy new parks, to refurbish old parks.
That's actually good. That actually is a good thing. And another good thing.
But the state said you can't do it. That's unfair. How can people do it?
We have really shitty leadership. We could talk about state leadership for like another episode.
But what happened? But
our state leadership is dog shit.
Right. Okay.
And maybe we'll have different reasons for why we feel that way, but it is dog shit.
So here's what happens is the city of Austin doesn't want to get into any fights that they're not going to win that's going to piss the state off at them.
But
that's what they do.
No, they literally love getting into fights with the state because then it's political posturing. It's like, hey, look, we're targeting the state for this and this, and look at how progressive we are. Vote for me.
That's not true. I'll tell you what happened to me. Right. I'll tell you. I was sitting there testifying bill, and I'm going to change some of the names to protect the guilty here.
Go do your thing, yeah.
But okay, so as this bill, there was a big, huge Austin smashing thing, and it was going to smash a big Austin City Department. And I was sitting there, and I happen to know some of these people by some other work I've done in the city. And they see me sitting there, and they come after me and says, Craig, we want you to say some things for us. I say some things? About what? About the bill? Yeah, that bill's going to be terrible for us. I want you to say some things. I said, why don't you say it? Because they won't let us.
Wow, all right.
And I said, okay, give it to me. And we sat down there. I said, yeah. Oh, Ben, I'll say all that. You know what I mean? Trust me. The city really run because of the horrible things the state can do. The state tried, actually, a former city council member who's now at the state tried.
Was it Ellen?
Yeah,
Ellen.
I won't. I'll give you her initials. Her initials are Ellen.
No,
Troxclair.
I know. I know. I know.
But no, what she must hate Austin Energy, because what she did is she tried to prevent. Austin Energy transfers $114 million a year to the general fund. Now, the reason they do that is because, like Houston, that doesn't have.
Okay, hold on, Craig. One second. And it's good that we have a general fund that spends money on parks and doing all that stuff. But the problem is we waste a lot of money. And a lot of the money that we spend in that fund goes pretty unaccounted for.
Right,
There was a budget in 2020 for homelessness for like $70 million. And like 40 million or 30 million of that just went totally unaccounted for.
Okay.
And this was like when the homeless were just camping out all over the place, just building tent cities everywhere.
That's a separate problem. That is an important problem. And we have a city auditor's office that is an independent auditor's office that's pretty good. I've talked to them. And that's where you would address that issue and try to get some. But what I'm talking about is, say, at least half that money is going to go to something good. So let's just say 50 million, okay? Just for the argument. Okay. Well, now Houston does not have socialist electricity. They have they have to pay private companies for electricity.
Yeah.
But they can, because one company gets access to all the Houston customers, they can charge a franchise fee. Meaning if you want to sell electricity to all our millions of customers, you're going to pay us something, and that franchise fee is about $115 million. So what Austin said, well, it's our company. Let's charge them the franchise fee and put it to the general fund so we have money to do some good. Okay? And see, it's like other companies. Austin electric rates are still some of the lowest in the state. They're still, it's a reliable company. It didn't go offline like all those other energy companies did.
Well, I mean, Austin, I don't know. I think that the Austin Energy comments, considering what happened this winter, it's a little...
Well, that's a different issue. We can get into that. But here's what... But she tried to pass a bill that's made it illegal for any city-owned energy company to transfer any money to the general fund. You know what that would have done to Austin? Do you know what that... $115 million less dollars in the general fund. Imagine what that would have done to Austin. That would have been really bad. And, of course, it didn't pass, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Thank God it didn't pass. But the thing is, this is why, when it comes to the state is not, right now, it looks to me like Governor Abbott and our mayor, Kirk Watson, are fighting over DPS and pulling people over. And I don't know if you've read about that.
I don't think any of that matters. When you have a DA that doesn't prosecute violent criminals, it's all lip service. And all that's going to happen, my opinion with the DPS stuff is like, I think our police force is very demoralized considering everything that's happened, right? I also think that like you should have better standards you can like openly support law enforcement, but just create like better standards. Like when I ran for council, like not joking around, like for mayor, I said that you should have to have like a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and train at like an MMA gym, like in the community 3 times a week, or go to a boxing gym and do stuff like that where you're like around other human beings, and like, make sure you go to a yoga class like once a week and do stuff like that so that these violent incidences happen a lot less. So like, I think like there should be like real accountability, but like, what's happening right now is like you just have an insane, you just have demoralization, and you have a DA that just doesn't prosecute like violent criminals at all. Like I'll tell you a story right now. I'll tell you 2 stories. So 2 of my friends actually helped get these guys arrested who were beating the shit out of their girlfriends, right, like in downtown Austin. And it was on a pedicab. One of the guys threatened to stab the pedicab driver, okay? And when they arrested the guy, and they chased him down on a pedicab. When they arrested the guy had a gun on him. And then my friend said? He said he saw those guys like out walking around shopping at Target with those same girls literally the next day or a day after that. I'm friends with Jamie Hammond. He does the Dash documenting ATX. There's this homeless guy named Rami or whatever. He has a chainsaw. He walks around openly carrying a chainsaw, thinking that the devil is in the trees by the Greenbelt. And Jose Garza just didn't charge him with anything, and now he's out just doing the same shit. Like, this guy's gonna kill somebody potentially.
Well, okay, so I don't know enough about both those cases that you told me about to make a good judgment on it. I do know, though, I have a friend who is an assistant DA, and I know that they charge people with crimes. There is something called and I'm not really well versed on this, but there is a prosecutorial discretion that's a foundation of our legal system.
Yeah.
And so there always is going to be some prosecutional discretion. So,
okay.
We granted that. Okay. The question is how they're using it and why they're using it. And in order to, from what I've heard and what I've seen, I don't think that the DA is just letting violent criminals off. I think it's a more complicated issue than that. And I'm not ready to jump into that bandwagon until I know.
It's bad optics. And when I'm driving a pedicab and you got people like that who are walking down the street, like threatening to like stab my friend who, while they're beating up their wives and they're out on bond after they got arrested as a result of a pedicabber, that undermines like our public safety. And you got people like breaking into our shop kind of consistently now, trying to steal things and stuff like that. Like, and when you have when even the idea of a permissive environment, it encourages that. But all right, last thing before we wrap up, how do you feel about like the environmental impact of like just all the homeless that are camping out everywhere, or just like all the homeless and like I saw the video of Jamie Hammond doing this thing at the Barton Creek Greenbelt, the Violet Crown Trail, and it looked like a war zone. It looked like it looked like you were in Libya almost, just to paint a broad picture, and it just felt like that's a huge environmental safety hazard when you have needles that can go right into the water, when you have like people going to the bathroom right in the public, when you have like all types of garbage and trash and all these, all this stuff that's just right in the middle of our creeks and our greenbelts. And like they're doing cleanups now because people are pressuring it. But I feel like Save Our Spring should be, I just, some constructive feedback. I would feel as though Save Our Spring should be a lot more vocal about this.
Okay, well, here's about the homeless issue. Once again, I'm not a.
We're not trying to criminalize homelessness, right. But like this is just something that you're seeing with the environment.
Okay, what I'm seeing in my work with Watershed Protection Department and PARD is both those people care very much about the homeless. And one of the things they're trying to do is when there's a homeless encampment somewhere, if they can encourage them to move, if it's an environmentally sensitive area, they try to encourage them to move, but how are you going to make them move? That's, just steal their tents, tear down their tents or whatever. That is a tricky issue.
I mean, no, like you just make it very clear, like you cannot camp, and these are places that you cannot camp because it's environmentally sensitive.
Well, they don't move.
Well,
so what do you do?
You ask them to move, and if they don't move, then you get them out of there. Like, but you ask them politely, and you give them like a set, fair time frame. And if they don't move, then you make them move.
Well,
because what about the residents and people who want to walk around with their kids in that area? Like, you got to do something about that.
The only people who could make them move in order to do an action like that, you have to have arresting authority. The only people with arresting authority in the city are the Austin police. So what you'd be doing is asking a whole lot of Austin police officers to go down and force homeless people to go where?
I don't know. Not by the greenbelts, not by an environmentally sensitive area, and not by a commercial business district.
Okay. Well, until you got an answer to that, you're not going to have the city do that. Number one. Until you got an answer to where they're going to go, and then they have to want to go there. They have to want to go there, because you can say, okay, you're going here, and they say, I don't like it, and they walk off. I mean, you see, this is a bigger problem than people realize. So what the city does now is, if they're camping, they encourage people to move. They're by these buildings, try and get, they have, Graham, the guy in way East Austin, and little houses and his thing there.
I like Mobile Lobes. That's a good thing.
Mobile Lobes
is a great, yeah. Well, but how much money do we give to Mobile Lobes?
Well, we give money, and we also give money and land to foundation
communities.
I
feel like we should be giving more money to Mobile Lobes, though. Like I think places like Mobile Lobes that actually like provide them with a better foundation, and like some of like a religious foundation, and like just better drug rehab guidelines from what I've heard. Like I think that we should just give more money to those types of companies.
Well, we give a lot of money to those companies already, and we gave downtown land to foundation communities. There's a big, huge downtown center they're building. There's one up in my neighborhood. I'll tell you. But what happened is Mobile Lobes, before he moved out east, I can't think of his first name. Graham is his last name. He's a great guy. He wanted to put a community of small houses where the Q2 soccer stadium is now.
I was against that stadium, so.
But let me tell you, that's a whole other. I could talk for 2 hours on that. But what happened is the people who lived up there complained and hollered and yelled. And
they also complained and hollered and yelled about the stadium too.
Well, I know. And see, that was one of the problems. But the stadium had Alan Graham.
Yeah, that's his name.
the stadium had the political clout because they had the mayor in their back pocket at that time, and Alan Graham did not.
Yeah.
End of story. I would have much rather seen Alan Graham up there than the Q2 Stadium personally.
Yeah, I think Mobile Lowe's is a great organization.
Oh,
I think they're fantastic. I think
absolutely fantastic.
We should help them out more and do all that stuff.
Those and Foundation Communities, those two organizations. But it's going to take more than just that. But it's a big problem. There's a lot to get into.
I mean, that's for another episode. And I definitely want you to come back. This is a really fascinating, fun discussion about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, Craig, how do we get a hold of you?
You just call my number, or you my phone number. You got my phone number? Do you want?
Well, this is just for the episode, just for the audience.
Oh, for the audience.
It's for the audience.
C.Nazor@earthlink.net.
I love that email address. Do you have a Twitter or an Instagram or social media?
No, I have a Facebook page, but I don't do Twitter, and I rarely do Instagram. So the best way is Facebook and email.
Interesting. Well, people on Twitter, they'll know who you are when I share the video. Craig, thank you so much for having me on the show. Maybe next time we'll talk about how the Uber and the scooters are an environmental disaster as well. But
that's another interesting
we didn't get into
topic.
that. I'm kind of sad about that. But
that's a good topic.
Craig, thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right.